The battlefield of Crethon 9 had fallen silent, save for the crackling of burning debris and the distant hum of retreating warships. Captain Arya Vale dragged herself through the ash, her combat suit's integrity compromised in 7 places, each one an entry wound that should have killed her 3 times over. But she wasn't done yet. 50 meters ahead, partially buried beneath the wreckage of a collapsed command tower, lay the Apex Scout. The creature's chitinous armor was shattered, its forearms twisted at unnatural angles, by all accounts of the war that had raged between humanity and the Apex Collective for 6 brutal years. Arya should have left it to die, should have put a mercy round through its skull and moved on. The Apex had glassed Earth's colonies, had turned Mars into a crematorium, had made it clear that humanity was an infestation to be cleansed from the galaxy. But the Scout was young. Arya could tell by the pale blue of its carapace, not yet darkened by age and combat. And it was screaming, a high-pitched keening that her translator couldn't process but her heart understood perfectly. Pain, terror, the universal language of suffering, command. "This is Vale," she rasped into her comm, dragging herself forward another meter. Blood filled her left boot. "I've got a live Apex combatant. Requesting immediate static." The relay tower was down. Of course it was. She could feel her consciousness flickering like a dying star. Her suit's medical systems were screaming warnings she couldn't afford to acknowledge. 3 cracked ribs, punctured lung, massive internal bleeding. The rounds that had torn through her came from her own kind, friendly fire in the chaos of retreat. Ironic, she thought, that humanity's weapons might succeed where the Apex had failed. The Scout saw her coming. Its mandibles clacked in what Arya's fading awareness recognized as distress. It tried to drag itself away with its one functional arm, leaving a trail of violet ichor across the scorched earth. "Easy," Arya whispered, though she knew it couldn't understand. "Easy." She reached the creature and assessed the damage with a soldier's trained eye. The tower's collapse had severed its lower abdomen. It was dying and dying badly. Her hand moved to her sidearm, the mercy she'd offer any wounded soldier. But the Scout's eyes stopped her. All 6 of them, each one reflecting the burning sky above. There was intelligence there, awareness. The kind of consciousness that made killing feel less like combat and more like murder. "We're supposed to be better than this," she thought, remembering the words from her academy days, spoken by an instructor who'd been vaporized over Io 3 years ago. "We're supposed to be the species that chooses." Her medical kit was shattered, but her suit's emergency foam dispenser still functioned. Barely. Arya pulled herself beside the alien warrior and began sealing its wounds. Her hands shook. Blood, her own, dripped onto the Apex's carapace. The Scout went still, its mandibles frozen in shock. Perhaps it expected death. Perhaps mercy was not a concept its species understood. "You're going to live," Arya said, voice barely a whisper, "because someone has to break this cycle. Might as well be us." She worked for 17 minutes by her suit's dying chronometer. 17 minutes of applying foam, stabilizing fractures, and keeping the creature's vital functions stable with her suit's last medical charges. 17 minutes while her own life drained away through 7 holes. When the Apex retrieval team finally arrived, drawn by the Scout's distress beacon, they found an impossible scene. A human soldier, dead from her wounds, her hand still pressed against their comrade's sealed abdomen. The foam she'd used glowed faintly in the darkness, a cocoon of protection given freely by one who had every reason to hate. The Scout survived. When it recovered enough to speak, it told its story to anyone who would listen, told them how the human had crawled through her own death to save an enemy, how she had spent her last moments not on revenge but on compassion. Most dismissed it as combat-induced delirium, but Warlord Cran did not. Cran had commanded the Crethon 9 offensive, had given the orders that led to the colony massacres, had believed with absolute certainty that humanity was too weak, too sentimental, too soft to survive in a galaxy built on strength. But strength, he realized staring at the Scout's testimony logs, came in forms he'd never considered. The human had been strong enough to see past hate, strong enough to choose mercy when vengeance would have been easier, strong enough to save a life when her own was forfeit. It was a strength the Apex, for all their military might, did not possess. Cran accessed the human service record. Captain Arya Vale, decorated 17 times, had lost her entire family in the Mars bombardment. Had every reason to let that scout die in agony, but she hadn't. The warlord sat in silence for 3 days, replaying the recovered footage from Arya's suit camera, watching her drag herself forward, watching her hand steady despite the pain work to save a life, watching her die with what their cultural analysts identified as a smile. On the 4th day, Cran issued Directive 7, the complete reformation of the Apex Combat Code. Strength without mercy is not strength. It is waste, he declared to the assembled War Council, his voice carrying across every Apex vessel in the fleet. The human Captain Arya Vale understood what we have forgotten, that the true measure of a warrior is not in how many they kill, but in who they choose to save. She took 7 rounds to save 1 life. Let that exchange rate become our standard. Let every Apex warrior know, there is no honor in extinction, only in the choice to preserve what can be preserved. The council erupted in chaos, but Cran silenced them with a gesture. On the central display, he projected the image of Arya, blood-soaked and dying, her hand pressed protectively against her enemy. "This is the warrior who defeated us," Cran said quietly, "not with weapons, not with tactics, but by showing us what we could become if we were brave enough to change." The Apex Human War ended 6 weeks later. The peace treaty was signed on Crathon 9, at the exact coordinates where Arya had died. The Apex named it Vale's Ground. And in every Apex military academy, above every training chamber and barracks entrance, they inscribed the same 7 words in both Apex script and human English. She took 7 rounds to save a life. It became their code, their mantra, the foundation of a warrior culture transformed by one human's final act of defiance, not against an enemy, but against the very concept of absolute enmity itself. Arya Vale never knew she'd won the war, but the galaxy never forgot that she had.